It's said that the main contenders for his position are Jim Jordan, who you know very well from Benghazi.
Well, I don't know him well. I watched him and stared at him for 11 hours while he made stuff up about me. So I don't know him, but I've seen him in action.
Salty. All these flavors, and you choose salty. Hillary Clinton, very upset about Jim Jordan. He made stuff up about me for 11 hours. Well, she's going to be happier, I'm sure, now that his name's being floated for House Speaker, and he says that he would do it. So what is happening with this? I told you yesterday, there are literally 3 people in the House that I like, and four. Thomas Massie is chief amongst them, and the congressman joins us now. Seems like he's in his beautiful home in Kentucky. Although if that was my yard, I would probably just pretend I was there all the time and have that be all my wallpaper in my office. Congressman, it's good to see you. So is that a real thing? Could Jim Jordan be Speaker of the House?
I think he can. People have asked why wouldn't he run before, and I think it wasn't his time before, but I think this is his time. He's a former coach, and I've served with him on the Oversight Committee. I've served with him on the Judiciary Committee. If you watch some of these hearings, we pass the ball in Judiciary Committee. Usually in these committees, they go by seniority, and they would never let a freshman ask a question before somebody who's been there 20 years. Jim Jordan finds out what questions you want to ask, and if you've got the better question, you go first, even if you're a freshman. So, and then even though I'm Matt Gaetz and I are kind of on the different sides of things this week.
Look at you.
Well, I yield Matt Gaetz time in Judiciary Committee if he's got a better question than me or more insight into it. But that's because Jim Jordan fosters that kind of cooperation. And I think he could do what he does in Judiciary Committee and what he's done in Oversight Committee and do that in the House of Representatives and make everybody a better version of the representation they provide their people.
So you believe that he can get the magical 218 vote number?
I think the Trump endorsement was a shot in the arm and a very helpful thing. But Jordan I would put him neck and neck with Scalise before that endorsement happened. By the way, I am making calls for Jim Jordan. When I get off of your show, I will be calling more of my colleagues and, hey, where are you at on this? Can you go public? Okay, you got to stay quiet. All right, appreciate it, but we can count on your vote. And here's the thing to understand. This is going to be a secret ballot. Unless it goes to the floor and there's a floor fight, which we would hope to avoid because there were 15 rounds of that last time. We would hope that we could all get together in a conference, agree that even though we weren't unanimous there in voting for our person, if our person got a large majority of the conference, that we would then go to the floor and vote for that person. But if it goes the way we want it to, you won't know who your member of Congress voted for. There'll be no evidence. He could tell you later on, and he may tell you he voted for the winner.
Yeah,
whether he did or not.
We're talking with
He's going to tell the winner that.
We're talking with Congressman Thomas Massie. That's interesting because I know Scalise is running as well. And I like Congressman Scalise, but in terms of voting record and position, he's more in line with a McCarthy as opposed to more conservative. Is that really that big of a change with speakership from a McCarthy to a Scalise?
Well, by the way, if Scalise ascends to speaker from majority leader, presumably the rest of the leadership team moves up one notch. And, I like all of those people, but that's just the way Washington, D.C. works. One person goes out of the lineup and they just move everybody up a notch. And I think it's time to get some new blood in there. Jim Jordan is nowhere in that leadership hierarchy right now, all the way down to executive vice deputy prom queen. I mean, we've got positions in leadership I didn't know existed. And Jim Jordan is in none of those positions. So this would be great. It would be an injection of new leadership, not just moving everybody up one. And by the way, I love Steve Scalise too. He's a hero. I mean, he took a bullet and survived. And he's great. And honestly, the ideology, even though if you look at their record and Jim Jordan is more conservative based on voting, ideology really shouldn't matter in the speaker's position. It should be more about your ability to bring the whole conference together.
That's interesting.
Because you're going to have to get 222 people. you're going to have to get 218 of them to agree on something.
Yeah, and we're talking with Congressman Thomas Massie of the beautiful state of Kentucky, and that I think is what a lot of people, because not everybody is as nerdy into politics as we are. I mean, obviously you're a lawmaker. Not everybody's as nerdy into politics as, all of the, the regular listeners of the show and watchers of the simulcast who can across the country. So they think, I get the idea that some people might think, well, just put the most conservative person in there. And I love that idea, but you got a slim 5-seat majority. So you do have to deal with the cards that you're dealt. Do you think based on that, the Democrats in the House, how much more does that make it more difficult for Republicans in the House? I mean, because I love Jim Jordan. This is why I like him. He just doesn't play, and he's just not going to, has no tolerance for any kind of shenanigans. Democrats love shenanigans. How's that going to work?
Listen, I think it's going to work, and I'll tell you why. Jim Jordan has signed up for the Massie plan, okay?
Yes.
The Massie plan was a way to get past this shutdown, should it, and I floated it this time last year, when we were in the midst of this and the Democrats were in control, and I tweeted this. I said, when we get control of the House, we need to do all 12 separate bills, but if the Senate doesn't take up our 12 bills, we've got to have a fallback position. And I said that should be a CR at 95% funding. Now, I would be happy to shut the government down. Like, tell me which part you want me to shut down. But we've got 222 people in our conference, and some of them were elected in districts that Joe Biden won by 10 points. But they won. And they feel like if they can't win their reelection, and we'll go in the minority. So they get a little nervous when we go into a shutdown situation. Right. So instead of having this apocalyptic shutdown that forces people to have two bad choices, either an omnibus or shutdown, I said, let's have a different choice. Let's just automatically cut government if we get to that point and we haven't decided. That way, it's not enough to make everybody panic, and it's not enough to force us into submission to do unnatural things at the last minute. And actually, Kevin had agreed to that in the January deal. He said, if we get to October 1st, I agree, and this was a concession that we got from him. He agreed to do a CR at 98% if we got to October 1st and hadn't resolved this with the Senate. Now, somehow all this got twisted this summer, and people were saying that Kevin broke the deal when we got to the end and we didn't have our bills done. He put a CR on the floor that funded government 92% with a border security package in it. And conservatives said, nope, not good enough. We're going to vacate you. And that's what I think is a little disingenuous here. The CR was actually, the CR with the cut in it was our idea, and that we got him to agree to in January.
Interesting. And that's a good point that you make, talking with Congressman Thomas Massie of the beautiful state of Kentucky, who, by the way, hasn't voted for some of the omnibus stuff that some of the people talking about principles with spending have voted for. Just kind of wanted to put that out there because it is facts, and we are conservatives. We also believe in two genders, so we believe in facts like this. Because we still have the shutdown that's still looming. It's like, what, 40 some days away now?
Yeah.
The shutdown still looming. Do you think that, and I realize that we've got to go through getting a speaker because everything else is kind of frozen until that time, but with the back and forth and Democrats obviously loving the divide that they see in the Republican Party, do you think that the party is going to be able to put a show of togetherness enough to choose and elect a speaker and be able to get anywhere near as conservative a proposal as what you were just talking about?
Well, here's the good news, Dana. I was called a sellout this summer because I did vote for the debt limit deal, but I got a provision in there that's still there, even though Kevin McCarthy is gone. Joe Biden signed into law an automatic 1% cut in spending on January 1st. That happens if we're on a CR when we get to January 1st.
So that's why you traded that to so yes. That's why. Okay, interesting.
And that was long ago, and nobody ever thought we'd get to January 1st and be on a CR. But you know what? We're 45 days closer to January 1st. If they do another CR, if they did a CR, for instance, that lasted a year, they're going to get an automatic cut next year. Now, it triggers on January, and they have to start moving the money around like March or April. but it's retroactive back to October 1st. So that if they spend the next 6 months spending what they've been spending, and we hit this speed bump that I put in the debt limit deal, Kevin McCarthy got Joe Biden to agree to it, then they got to cut 2% for the remaining 6 months of the year to make up for the money they spent since October 1st. And this is in law. Like, I couldn't believe this was in the debt limit. People like poo-pooed it. But frankly, it's what we've got now. And I think if Jim Jordan is speaker, he can leverage that 1% cut to get the Democrats and some of our Republicans who don't like an indiscriminate cut to come to the table and do the 12 bills where we cut, where we decide what to cut instead of an indiscriminate cut. So even 12 bills at a 1% cut. And by the way, it's a real 1% cut. In Washington, D.C., math.
It's not for future fund. It's not for future funding. It's like right now money cut.
Yeah, they build a 6% increase into the budget. And so then when they cut it, when they only increase 5%, they'll call that a 1% cut. That's not the way this cut works. This is a 1% cut off of last year's number, not some projected growth number. So Jordan's got that in there, that little speed bump to motivate Democrats, Schumer to come to the table and Biden to deal, because Kevin actually got that in the debt limit deal.
And when you're looking at hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, that 1 and 2 and 3%, that starts adding up.
Yes, it's a cut to everything. I'm going to tell you too, it's a cut to military. So some of our folks aren't going to like that. It's going to be hard to hold the conference together when we go over even just a speed bump. But that's what will motivate people, hopefully, to come to the table and do 12 separate bills without losing our minds.
And we have about 30 seats in the House in districts that are pretty competitive coming up this election cycle. So that makes it a little, really, the pressure's on. I mean, the pressure is really on, and it's going to be difficult to keep that together. And that's going to be the task that Jim Jordan has. I know Jim Jordan got Ron DeSantis's. It looks like I think he got Ron DeSantis's endorsement as well as a number of other individuals. But I so appreciate you explaining that to everybody, because, and this is not an insult to people watching the show, and you know this as well as anybody. I mean, people are busy. They're busy working off to pay that $127 billion student loan stuff that Joe Biden just quote unquote forgave, like he's the Lord or something. He just forgave it. And people, and we were just talking on break about the debt clock. You said that when I saw this, in spring, that it is, I'm terrified to even look at what the number is. I don't even know if I want
to. Well, here, I'm going to hold it up. I wear this.
This is a horror show right here. This number. This is the scariest thing you're going to see this month for spooky season. He made that. He probably went to like Ace Hardware and Joann's Crafts and just did that in like 15 minutes. His debt clock.
It actually took me 45 hours to write all the code that makes this work. It goes to Treasury's website once a day, downloads the actual debt to the penny and the debt per second so that it can calculate it on weekends and holidays when Treasury's not working, but the money's being spent.
See, this is why you want him in charge of our money. Congressman Thomas Massie, always appreciate talking with you. Thank you so much for your fight and for being so transparent for everybody and being principled. We so appreciate it.
Thanks, Dana.
Of course. Have a great weekend. We'll talk again soon.